The most important lesson I've ever learned is the essential and the difficulty of walking the line between confidence and humility, and how the two interplay to result in wisdom, and how it's really important that we have both and project both. Again, and I think I said this earlier, it's not an easy task for me either. And yet I think until I reached a certain age, I didn't really quite understand the balance that needed to take form. And I feel like I'm finally there at this point in my life. And it's such a gift to be able to tightrope that a little bit better now than I could 20 years ago. And I genuinely look forward to the time where my joints are so sore that I can barely walk, but I can do that tightrope better than I ever could in my entire life. That, to me, is success. Hi, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you and with Cody. I was just telling Cody backstage that it's a really, really exciting day for me. My name is Shermin Kruse, and my new book, Stoic Empathy, comes out today. That means it might be at your local Barnes & Noble. In fact, I'm going to go to the Barnes & Noble with my kids later this afternoon and pick up my copy. My sister just texted me a picture of herself. She lives in Canada, so she got it in Indigo and she took a little picture. So it's a really, really amazing day for me. The book is Stoic Empathy, and the focus of the philosophy of which I speak about right now is that intersection between Stoicism and empathy. And I use it as an approach to power in this book and as an approach to control and leadership. So we utilize Stoic principles to control ourselves and empathic principles to have influence over others. About me as a human, I am from Iran. I am pushing 50. I have 4 kids. I live in Chicago, and I love all of the countries I've lived in, this one the most. And I live in the United States now, but I also lived in Canada briefly. And I'm a law professor. I'm a tried your hand at street fighting kind of person, but also like to meditate. So I'm a little bit of confluence of East and West in a lot of different ways, which I think is really found in this book as well. And I'm here to talk to you guys about it.
Man, that's okay. That's a great intro. All right. So, how long have you been like the practices or philosophies in this book? How long have you been like working on this or practicing these things or studying these things?
Yeah. Well, so really a lot longer than I realized I was doing it. And maybe you've had an experience like that where you wake up one morning and you're like, wait a minute, I've kind of been doing this my whole life. And the moment I really realized how long I had been doing this since childhood, really, was a few years ago. And I'll tell you that story in a minute. But let me tell you the story that sort of brought it all home in my head, in my mind, and connected it all together for me. I started thinking about what it was like for me as a kid in Iran, because I was born in 77. The Islamic Revolution happened in 79. And one of the things to keep in mind about the Islamic Revolution is that not only were the first 10 years following it an extremely bloody era with massive amount of oppression as the government was trying to gain a foothold over the people, but also the people themselves were not accustomed to this level of oppression. They weren't accustomed to the rules that were coming down the pike that were based on Islam as this group of people understood it, right? Maybe not Islam for real, but Islam as this group of people understood it or imposed it. And so it was a shock to our system. It was a daily shock. We hadn't figured out how to maneuver our way through it. We hadn't figured out how to cope with it. It was just everyday kind of struggle. And then the neighboring country, Iraq, attacked Iran. And so then we were suddenly in this really bloody war at the same time. The war started in 1980 and lasted through the late 80s. I think it ended around 89. I left Iran in 88. At the time I left, there was up to 6 missile attacks a day into the city. And the stories about one night, which was representative of many, many nights, but this one sticks in my memory like so sharp. Like, when you have those memories from your childhood and you sort of, everything else is fuzzy, but this one's really clear. I remember waking up from the red alert sirens in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, something like that. I was a child. I was 10 or 11 years old at the time. I have two sisters. They're younger than me. And I have my parents. And my parents are just sort of like middle class Iranians. My dad's an engineer. My mom's a mathematician. So nobody really fancy, but, well educated people. And what they do is we don't have time to make it to the bomb shelter. We use the basement as a bomb shelter. A lot of Iranians did back then, because you can tell based on the sound of the alarm how close the missiles are. And so that's when like you grab the kids and you just go under a door frame, right? And you just huddle and you sort of like imagine if it were you and you were that parent and you would like kind of like put your arms around your children like a protective barrier. And you can't stop the bomb, but if there's an aftershock and the glass shatters, right, you can probably get most of the glass or you can get most of the rubble. Like there's a lot you can do to actually physically protect your kids. But at that moment, it's really about the emotional awareness that you have that your children are terrified and you too are scared. It's scary. There's missiles falling from the sky, right? That is an objectively scary thing. And they could kill you, your wife, and your children. But despite the fear, and the fear is there, it's a real emotion, it exists. You don't push it out, you don't pretend it doesn't exist, but you act calmly and rationally and decisively and quickly, despite the fear, right? Precisely because of the people you're responsible for. You huddle them around as quickly as possible, you put your arms around them, and you keep them calm because that is what you need to do for them. It's your empathic understanding of those people that allows you to act like a freaking Marvel superhero in that moment, right? And human beings do this when they swerve out of the way in traffic. They do this. I mean, this is just something human beings are capable of doing. And it's really an extraordinary thing. Everyone's probably done it at some point or been protected by it. And so that's really what the book is about. It's can we recognize, oh my God, how do we harness that power? And how do we apply that power into everyday situations that maybe aren't so life and death, but it's a job interview, or it is an anxious discussion with my spouse, or it is a hostile takeover of my company, right? So these sort of life situation or tech negotiation with my child, right? With my teenager. And so how do I harness that power and bring it into each and every one of those situations? So I'm maintaining my empathic awareness, but I'm also maintaining control. And that's really the focus of the book. And I think a lot of people can relate to it.
Excuse me, man. Yeah, that's a hell of a story. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it provides perspective because you mentioned traffic. And I think a lot of people think about sitting in traffic and being stoic, but then there's people in the world who are shielding their children from potential damage from missiles and bombs. And that's just like that's an incredible perspective shift. Did you say in your intro that you were almost 50? You're
Yeah,
almost
I'm
50?
47. Yep. I
Wow, that's
turned
like
48 in like a month.
I would not have guessed that. You look great. Um, because and the reason I say that is like it's sort of one of the reasons I was asking that question, like how long have you been doing this? Like it's clear that you're taking care of yourself, and it's like you're taking care of your mental state. It sounds like because to present yourself and look the way that you do, it's clear that you're using these philosophies that you're teaching. So I was just trying to make the connection to that.
Thank you.
Because I mean, when you think about like when a person thinks about like stoic, like being stoic, you think about a person, unless you've studied it like Marcus Aurelius or those guys, but
Right.
if you think about somebody like being stoic, it's like the person is like unbothered regardless of what's going on around them, or
Yeah.
or what's going on inside of them is not affected by what's going on around them. And so I think that when people can do that, like when there's just something going on, there's something that on the outside world, but they are still grounded, maybe is that the word, grounded with themselves,
Yeah.
and it's like they're not really bothered. So yeah, I mean I think it's clear that you're taking care of yourself.
Thank you.
Dude, if I
It's a
were you,
process.
that'd be my marketing line for my book, like like this
I
is
love it.
how you know these
I
things
love
work.
it. Oh my gosh, I love it. No, definitely not. I mean, I am almost near half a century old, which is remarkable. And if your viewers are that age, they know what it was like to be 20 years younger and 30 years younger. And whatever it is that your assets are now, holy cow, what were they back then, right?
Mm,
And so the reality is that the process of aging, which is actually an incredible gift, it is also an incredibly humbling experience. So I'm at the age now where I can't I can't do my street fighting anymore because my joints get damaged, right? That's something that wasn't there 5 years ago, like not even
Mm.
20 years ago. 5 years ago, I didn't have to pull my punches. Now I do, or I'm going to damage my joints. That's a real thing that's going to happen. And it's terrifying and scary, but also incredibly exciting because, you know, what the Stoics would say is you don't look forward to death. Death isn't something that's going to happen to you. Death is something that's behind you. Every day you've already lived is dead. Every day you have
Mm.
left to live is life, right? And so, and you're probably a lot more dead than alive, right? Most of your days are gone, right? Especially for those of us who are my age. Those of my days, most of my days are gone. And what I have left is ahead of me. And it's like this incredibly beautiful gift that is available for me to take. And I can't, can I swear on your show, Cody?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
this like a,
yeah.
so, but I can't fuck it up because I don't get a ton of chances at this. And if I really damage myself irreparably, I won't be able to recover from it. And so, because my body is, at the end of the day, human body, it's a fragile human body. Humans are frail.
Mm.
And so I have to try to keep it strong as best I can. And I'm not an athlete like you are. My husband's an athlete, but I do my best as I sort of like, you know, bumble around my way through the world. And I'm not even I'm not a coordinated person. I'm not a clumsy person who like bumps into walls and stuff all the time because I'm always thinking about 35 different things and I get distracted and this happens and that happens. But overall, I try very hard to live my life with intention towards my mind, my body, my politics, my family, my faith, and approach it all. And this is really what I help people do with greater intentionality, because it's not my place to tell you what your faith should be. It's not my place to tell you what you should eat. It's only my place to help you do so in a way that is who you want to be and not just what you want to feel like doing in that very moment. And those
Mm.
can be very, very different things. So we can be stoic like a dead person who has no feelings, or we can be stoic like a warrior, where we still are able to experience incredible feelings, incredible joy, incredible strength, or we can be stoic like a monk, where we can
Mm.
find the calm within us despite the chaos of this world and find massive strength within that calm and still maintain compassionate awareness of the world. And so there's all of these different ways that Stoicism can show up for us. And it's really at the end of the day up to us to decide how we want to do it. And all I do is I try to give you the options and the tools.
Mm. Man, okay, there's so much. Uh First of all, the shift, the perspective shift on death. I want to go back to that for a minute because you were talking about
Yeah.
like death is behind you. And I think a lot of us think about the rest of our life being in front of us and like we're trying to build this life for ourselves or whatever it is. And the reality is that every day we live is another day that's taken off of that list. You know,
Yeah.
and it's I mean, it sounds like that might be a depressing way to look at it, but I don't think so because I think
Yeah.
if you look at it over like that death is something that happens over a timeline, and hopefully that timeline is as far out as possible for all of us, but it's over a timeline. It's like every day is closer to that. So it's like, how did you use that day? Like, what did you do with that day?
What did you do with that day? The Stoics say memento mori, which literally translated means remember you must die, which is does sound kind of depressing, but what it actually means is remember you are alive. You are not dead yet. And
Mm.
yet, this is a temporary condition of existence. It will end. Whatever your beliefs are about the afterlife are different, right? Whether there's nothing or whether there is something, that is a different type of existence. This existence comes to a definitive end at some point.
Hmm.
And the fact that it ends is precisely what gives it meaning and what makes everything about being alive so extraordinary. And so that allows you to keep perspective and find how it is you want to live within the space that is your life. And it is true that most of death is already behind you. Most of it is behind you. And really, at the end of the day, you can take really great care of your body so you can have a longer lifespan, but you could get hit by a bus any day, right?
Right.
Or the missile could have fallen on me as a child. I mean, to some extent, death is beyond our control, right? There's a certain extent of it that we can't control. And so we don't really get to choose when we die. We
Mm,
can do everything to prepare for a longer life, but we don't
mhm,
actually get to choose when or how we die. And so the reality is that that choice is something that doesn't exist. It's an illusion. But the life is not the illusion. The life is, in this moment, mine to live. And
mm.
this is what I want to do with it. And because that is true to who I am as a person, not just what I feel like doing in this moment, but I'm going to regret later.
Yeah. Man, I love that. I think that's true. I think death is outside of our control, but life is 100% inside of our control. And we
Yeah.
can do things to hopefully live a longer, healthier life. But I think you mentioned being a part of who you are. And I talk a lot about identity on this podcast. So I think one of the reasons that I'm so active and so involved in fitness and health is, yes, I would like to live as long as possible, but at the end of the day, that's who I am. Like, those things are who I like. It's just part
Right.
of me to do those things.
Right.
And I think it becomes just a lot easier, not easier, but a lot more aligned with who we are when we operate in that frame. Because, like, if you're trying to, I say this a lot on here, if you're trying to build a business or do anything that's like worthy of value, build any sort of thing that has value to it, it's going to be difficult at times. But if you are aligned with like that thing being who you are, if you are aligned with that, then it doesn't really matter how hard it is, because that's who you are. Like, at a certain point when you're in
Yeah.
fitness, you don't go to the gym to just get healthy. You go to the gym for going to the gym, because that's just part of like that's just part of your day, you know?
Yeah. It's a part of the way you live. Not
Right.
so it's not just about the ends, but it's also about the means themselves.
Hmm.
How do I live my life, right? And what I love about what you just said, Cody, is you took an example of physical discomfort, right? The discomfort of, say, pain or sweat or a rising heartbeat or sore muscles. And then you drew a parallel between that and an emotional discomfort, which is shit's going wrong at my business because my top client just left and I have to revise my strategy and figure out a different approach toward making ends meet so I don't have to lay off 4 people today.
Mm,
And and then there's also the emotional discomfort of, I know people who are like this a lot. They feel uncomfortable being around those who are extremely unfortunate. For some reason, they don't like it. It makes them feel uncomfortable. It makes them feel maybe guilty, or it makes them feel helpless, or they don't like it. They don't want to be around. They'll write you a check, but they're not going to come stand there and cook with you at the shelter, right? It just makes
right.
them uncomfortable. They're not bad people. They just don't want to be in that setting. And then there are people who feel uncomfortable with vulnerability, just like your business, right? If you want to be in this relationship and you want it to actually be meaningful, and maybe it's not worth it, just like your
Hmm.
business, and you need to change it up. But the reality is, you're either going from business to business to business to business and never actually accomplishing anything, or you're committing yourself to things in life and sticking with them for some sufficient period of time to really determine adequately their worth to you and to your soul, your mind, whatever it is you want to call it, right? And so I would say the same goes for vulnerability as goes for physical pain, as goes for business financial discomfort, right? It's the same thing. Embrace that discomfort. And that is one of the tenets of Stoic philosophy. Embrace the discomfort, be comfortable with the discomfort, not just pain, but also joy. Some people don't want to feel it. It's uncomfortable for them. They're too accustomed to sorrow. It's too easy to just be sad and feel sorry for yourself, or be angry and blame the world. And it's difficult to get past that. And so, yeah, so that's a big part of it. And I love that you drew that connection between business and the gym, because I do think there's a massive amount of parallels.
Yeah, I think first of all, this discomfort thing, about 2 hours ago, I was in a cold plunge. It was 45 degrees and I was in there for 3 minutes. And
Oh,
that
we
thing
did.
sucks, dude.
But did you, okay, but wait, this is my question now. Were you still for 3 minutes or were you moving?
I was moving for, yeah, because it breaks up the thermal layer. Because if you're
Okay.
still,
So,
your
okay,
body has it.
because I cheat and I stay still for 3 minutes. So it's really only uncomfortable for 30 seconds.
Well, but like, okay, so it's interesting you say that, because based on whose standards do you cheat? Because does somebody say you're supposed to move around? Because did somebody force you to get in there, or did you put yourself in there?
I'm just trying to say you're a lot better at that than I am.
Well,
And
I don't know
that's
about
all I'm
that.
trying to say. Good for you. I'm trying
No,
to give
well,
props where props are due.
I mean, no, I appreciate it, but that's an interesting concept, because it's like getting in that thing, man, is
Yeah.
you have to, unless somebody forces you to do it, like you put yourself in that environment. But
Right.
it's like, well, why do you do it? Like, I mean, it has health benefits and all that kind of stuff, but you get in there, man, and it's like, at a certain point, getting in there, yes, you get the health benefits, all that stuff. But at a certain point, the benefit becomes the mental battle that it is before you
Yeah.
get in the thing,
Yeah.
and and this is why I say all the time, like cold plunging changed my life. Like it literally changed my life. I can't tell
Believe
you
you. Yeah.
how many times it's been, I use that same, like, I think, who's the lady? Mel Robbins, I think,
Yeah.
she's a motivational speaker. She does
Yeah.
the
We have the
countdown
same
of the five.
publisher, by the way. We have the
Oh,
same
okay.
publishing house,
Nice.
which is crazy because it's a small, like they only publish 50 books a year. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
congratulations. But she's got the countdown thing. She does the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or
That's right.
whatever.
Yeah.
I think Tony Robbins refers to it as, he doesn't let his mind tell him, well, like maybe in a minute. Listen, with me, it's like I'll see a piece of like grass or something in there, like, oh, gotta screen this thing out. Let me screen it out before I jump in. It's like sometimes you just find like all these little excuses before you get in, but it's like at a
Totally.
certain point, the mental battle, overcoming that mental battle, is what like is the experience. You
Of course.
mentioned
Yeah.
earlier the discomfort, and this is a really good example, because you said the like business, like losing a client.
Yeah.
So to go back to the identity thing, are you a client of that company, or are you a business owner who sells the product or service that you sell? Because yes, I understand that losing that client, if it's a big client, if it's a small client, doesn't matter. Losing that client, that sucks. That's uncomfortable. I get that, but it's like, where is your identity in this? Are you just a is this person just a customer or client to you, or do you have the other identity, which is that you're a business owner or an entrepreneur or whatever? Because if that's the identity that you have, like these are things that you're going to deal with as a business owner or entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, what is part of that journey for you? And I think that identity is like where we put our identity, or where we find our identity, or how we build it, is huge.
I
because
agree.
because if you don't know who you are, and these things happen, I say this a lot, if you don't know who you are, these things happen and come along to test you, it's very possible they might show you who you are, and then you become I don't want to use the word slave or victim, but then you become a slave or victim to the circumstance, and not the creator of your life, because you're influenced by things that happen to you.
Yeah, so it's exactly right. It's about the power that you have in a situation because look, here's stimuli, here's response, okay? In between stimuli and response is you exist, you're
Hmm.
there. Other people also exist. There's
Hmm.
external power dynamics coming at you, right?
Yep.
It could be the political environment you live in. It could be the relationship you're in. It could be how much money you have. It could be where you live. It could be a variety of things, and they exist, and we can't deny the existence of also other people's powers or external power
Right.
dynamics or societal structures, but we
Hmm.
also can't deny our own existence. We are here, right? And we have power, some power within this space, and that power, the Stoics would say, rests with what's in you, because you can't really control. You can influence, and that's where a lot of how I use empathy is like, how do I understand this so that I can influence it better, right? But at the end of the day, I can't control it. I can only control what I say, not the response, but now I can control
Right.
the reply, right? Or how I say it next time. And that means I am in control of the answer to your question. I am in
Mm.
control of my identity, and I can change it if I want.
Yep.
right? And we do, everybody knows what this is like. You wear a lot of hats in life, right? You're very different. I'm a lawyer. I practiced law for 20 years, and the way I would present myself in court is very different than what I would wear at the beach. I mean, those are just like extremely
Right.
different things, and you wear completely different hats in those settings. Or even the way you are with your kids versus the way you negotiate a huge merger. Those are
Mhm.
very different personas and personalities that are a component of the same person. So who you are is also not only up to you, but also extremely dynamic
Mm.
and complicated and subject to change. So the great thing is when you're able to identify your core values that
Mm. Yep.
remain the same, whether you're in a bikini on the beach or in a suit convincing a jury, right? What is it that remains the same about you? And that component is your authentic self. And the rest of it is you maneuvering these external power dynamics of life because you have to in
Mhm.
order to succeed and find greater power within this space, within stimuli and response within yourself. And so it's basically seeing all of it for what it really is, or at least as close as you can get, or maybe a little bit closer than you did yesterday, reading it, evaluating it, and responding with an intentional and it doesn't have to be calm, but it should be rational response. So if you decide this is horrible, I should be angry, you can be angry. It's okay,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Somebody were to touch my daughter the wrong way, the appropriate response, in my opinion, would be anger. Now, if I was a Buddhist monk, that might not be an appropriate response. But right now, I'm telling you, I think that would be an appropriate response. But behaving in a way
Mhm.
that would further traumatize my child would not be an appropriate response.
Right.
And so I need to decide that line for myself. And again, that's where I say it's not up to me to tell you how to feel when
Mm.
tragedy strikes. Rather, it's up to you to discover not just that temporary flash of feeling that comes and goes, that you are just as much a slave to as you are to other people. How do you
Mm.
gain dominance over that too? Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because I think in the world that we live in with the social media and the internet and everything, it's easy to look at other people's circumstances or situations and think that we're supposed to do a certain thing or react a certain way or be a certain way. But I think the whole thing of what we're talking about here, knowing yourself, this identity, is that you know what's right for you in that moment.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is that you don't let the situation decide for you how you should react. Like you have your values, people have standards, they have values, and that is probably what's going to guide you to either do something or not do something. Like if you lose a client or somebody's trying to hurt you or whatever, you have those values and those standards. And
Right.
so I think the way to go back to the business thing, the way you might react, the way I might react, the way somebody else might, I mean, that's completely different. And it's going to depend on like those values for yourself and what you think is important for you to, the characteristics for you to embody.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, a lot of a lot of times I'll say like we, so one of the importances of self-confidence, one of the reasons that self-confidence is so important is so that people can state those values or those things or those standards for themselves. Because if we don't have that, and we don't like if we think that if I lose a client and this is a big client and my reaction to that is to feel that and then take that and then go apply it to get other clients or whatever. Well, I have to have some sort of belief and confidence in myself that that is the right direction for me to take from
Correct.
that spot. And that's why there's many different reasons why self-confidence is so important, but in this example that it kind of ties into that. um there was something you said earlier that I wanted to touch on. We've talked about so much in so little time. This has been a very efficient conversation because we talked about so much in such a little time, and it's crazy because a that's sort of like a is it a paradox? Is that the word? It's like a paradox because you could go so much deeper into
You can go
these
deeper. Yeah.
topics.
Yeah.
Um, anyways, I it'll come back. You mentioned that the book has is it principles or
Yes. So it's mostly a how-to book, really, at
okay?
the end of the day, but it also has a what component, right? So what is Stoicism? How do people see it? How can you approach it? What is empathy? What does it mean? Is it just like joining hands and singing Kumbaya and crying for each other? Or is it being a trauma surgeon and being able to treat with calm rationality the gunshot victim that got rolled in front of you despite your emotional state, right? Because of your awareness of exactly everything that's going on with the body of that gunshot victim. What is it? Which of those things is it, right? And which of those things do I want it to be? And how do I control that within a particular environment? And so that's the book. So it's like, how do I use empathy to gain information and influence in the room around me? How do I use Stoicism then to modulate my emotional involvement in any particular situation? And sometimes if people are overly sensitive, they might use it to learn how to take a step back, right? But there are also people who have a hard time with connection. So then they could use it to take a step forward. So again, I try very hard, like not to moralize. I don't know you, right? I don't
Mm,
know what your life is and I don't know why you are the way you are. And maybe it makes sense for you. And it makes sense in the context of your life, right? And maybe you're going to decide to be a different person tomorrow and that's your decision. I'm going to help you decide how to go about that. At the end of the day, the power and confidence and control that we have, it is extremely important that we don't turn it into a hubris, into an understanding that is inaccurate of our own greatness. We want to move with that power, but with awareness of our own frailties and flaws. Why? So we can be better tomorrow than we are
mm,
today, right? Like, Cody, if you're the same person you are today, 5 years from now, you would consider that a failure. You would want to be somewhere different in some way. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're bigger and stronger. It could, if that's your aim, but it could mean you are a better father or a better businessman, or you understand and maneuver things a little bit better, or because you're accumulating wisdom instead of remaining stagnant. That doesn't mean the person you are today is not extraordinary. And so it's that fine line between avoiding lack of confidence, but also avoiding hubris that
mm,
I think makes great, not just great leaders, but great souls and great minds and people who approach things, including themselves, with a critical eye, but with power. So that's the sort of combination I aim for. And it's not, I fail often. It's not
mm.
always easy. Yeah.
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 Well, I think the failure sort of shows you that you are growing, that you are going in the right direction.
I
And
hope so.
I love the analogy about the 5 years difference, because I think if we are the same person, uh, you know, in the future that we are now, I do think that I don't want to say that's a waste of time, because a lot of things that can happen that could be, valuable to life in that time. But I do think that we would be, sort of doing ourselves a disservice if we did not
Yeah.
in some kind of way grow during that period. Like I said, like we said
Right.
earlier, how are you using the days? When that
Yep.
day is past, how are
It's a
you using?
wasted
Because
opportunity. Yep.
yeah, yeah, because like I think life happens in days, but we look at it and we analyze it and we enjoy it in years. I feel like,
I agree.
you know, because
Yeah.
like a lot of these things that we're talking about, building businesses, families, relationships, all this stuff, this doesn't happen in a day. Like this is not a day to day thing. It
Right.
takes things every day to make it happen. But it's like you look back over a year and you're like, man, I did that. We did that. We went there. We did this. Like it's these things happen, and I think it comes down to the day to day journey of it. But it's just you don't see it in the day to day, and I think that's where a lot of us sort of get caught up in that. Uh, I'm not moving fast enough or far enough or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But
Well, time also moves differently, right? What is that saying? Long days, short years.
mm,
When the days feel long, but the years whip by. And that's a reality because living is difficult. It
yep,
just is. Life is a difficult condition. It's also extraordinary and spectacular, but
hmm
it's also difficult. And so it feels the way we experience time is different. It's right now, we know this day feels long, but when we look back on these days a few years from now, we will feel like they whipped by.
Yeah.
And that is a perspective shift. And if we can find that shift within ourselves and push through the day, not because it's a momentary joy or glib or fun thing that we want to do, but because we're looking forward to that 5-year result. And also we want to have lived that day in a way that we are proud of, because we could
Mhm.
die tomorrow. We might not have 5 years from now. So how did you live your yesterday? Is it true to who you are? If not,
Mm.
change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's so powerful. So so powerful. I think like and even looking at it that way is like a stoic philosophy because you can think, oh well,
Yeah.
this day is never going to happen again. Like, I mean, maybe that sucks, whatever. Or that gives it like an infinite amount of value. This
Yeah.
day is never going to happen again. And
Yeah.
so, what fascinates me about what I know about stoicism is it all comes down really to a mindset shift about the thing that you think that you are experiencing or whatever. It's like literally there's a lot of perspective change. There's a lot of mindset shift about it. And like I think about again the stoicism that I've followed and researched are like the Marcus Aurelius and those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
Uh,
the
and
actual thing from 2000 years ago. Yeah, not the vernacular of the word stoic, but actual
right,
stoicism. Right.
yeah, yeah. But it's like even like Marcus Aurelius, like he was powerful and he was all this kind of stuff, but like he was journaling like his thoughts, and that ended up being one
The
of the best selling books of all
meditations.
time.
I know.
Like
I know. He
and
never
so
I can't imagine he would have expected that to happen with his
probably not.
journal. Yeah.
Probably not. And it's like, but we see people that do all these great things, and these the world leaders and people who maybe world leaders is not a good example at this time, but like, but we see people who we think are doing
Well,
great
they're
things.
accomplishing a lot. They're doing
Well,
things,
I mean, yeah.
whether they're great or not. Things are happening. Things
Well,
are
I'll tell you
happening.
what, they're definitely stoic because they don't seem to be bothered by anything that's going on anywhere. So anyway, but
So the Stoics would not call that Stoic, though. So because Stoicism involves a component, of course, of power, control, and indifference to the reaction of others, but it also has a significant component of responsibility towards a
mm,
just society and behaving in a manner that is ethical and just. So to a Stoic, just not feeling things, that's sociopathic. That's not Stoic, right? Just not feeling anything or caring about what anyone else thinks ever is a sociopathic response, because as human beings, that's not the way we're supposed to live. So rather, what it is, the way we're supposed to live, the Stoics would say, is in a just way with responsibility towards ourselves, towards our progeny, towards the world, right? And in a manner that is intentional, so that our momentary response, our reflexive reaction to the actions of someone else, do not define us. We take control over them, right? They don't take control over us. But that doesn't mean we're not responsible towards other people. And it doesn't mean that we're not responsible towards our future self. And so it's the balance of that, because the reality is at the end of the day, the most stoic thing to do if your child got hurt would be to not let it affect you. If somebody hurt your little girl, the most stoic thing to do would be, I'm not going to let this affect me. But instead, you might be able to acknowledge the pain that she's in, which results in pain that you're in because of the human connection that you have with one another, which is essential for us to have a just response to the action, right? And so it's okay to have those feelings. We just can't let those feelings dictate who we are, dictate our actions, or dictate us. So we cannot become so overwhelmed that we sit on a couch and stare into distance every day for hours and hours a day, or punch out walls or beat up strangers on the street and wind up in jail. And now our little girl has to worry about us being in jail, like that, or sitting on the couch and staring into space. This is not an appropriate response. It's not the fair response. It's irresponsible. And to some extent, we might feel like it's outside our control. And to some extent it is. And the study of Stoicism is, how do you regain that control? How do you bring that back to yourself as much as possible? Because although there's all of these things, they're happening, they exist, there is always also you. always,
Hmm.
every time, every day, no matter what has happened, right? Viktor Frankl writes his book about being inside a concentration camp,
Yep.
right? He doesn't deny the suffering, but he fought to continue to affirm the value of his own existence, even in the worst of circumstances. And that was an extraordinary feat to be able to do. Soldiers do this, prisoners of war do this, but like so do parents, so do doctors, so do trauma counselors, right? They do this. And it's this really, really incredible thing of being a positive difference in the world and leaving it a little bit better than you found it, right? And doing that in a way that is responsible to the other people who are sharing this space with you and taking responsibility for the way your power dynamics affected other people's.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. Well, if that's the philosophy we're using, then definitely world leaders are not Stoics. most of them, most of them are not. I don't know, man, but it's interesting that you put it that way, though, because I don't know where I was going with that whole world leader thing was like, it's easy for us to see people that we think are talented or whatever, or like Marcus Aurelius, whatever people thought of him at the time. I'm sure it was mixed, but it's like these people deal with the same human emotions and the same fears and the same whatever that everybody else does. They figured out a way to, I don't want to say handle it better, because handle it isn't really, like, to use it for their better, they're the better good for themselves or people around them, or
Right.
understand it better or process it or whatever it is. But it's like, I guess the message is that these people that we admire are just like us. They've just found something, a better way to use that thing or understand that thing
Yeah.
that maybe we are not aware of at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think
Especially
it's,
people like Marcus Aurelius, who was a world leader, right? He
hmm,
was the ultimate philosopher king. He had more
yep,
power than anyone else in Rome. And he wielded it not in an unfeeling manner, but in a wise manner with an incredible amount of responsibility towards his people. And
hmm,
that's obviously the problem with kings, is like, we don't know what kind of king you're going to get, and usually power tends
right.
to corrupt. But in Marcus Aurelius's case, his strength from within enabled him as a leader to make things better for everyone else, including his people.
Do you
Yeah.
know? I'm just curious because I don't think I've ever figured this out or researched this. Do you know how he died? How he passed away? Was it in battle, or did he was he killed by somebody?
Oh my
I'm just
gosh,
curious.
I absolutely should know this. I
I
don't
can
remember. He didn't die in battle. Um,
I can look this up really quick. So
yeah,
I
look
use
it up real quick,
Perplexity.
because I'm old, as I said earlier. So
No, you're not. Um, Let me see. So I'm going to use voice. I'm going to use voice typing really quick. So
okay,
hang on just a
okay.
second.
This is the powerful world that we live in now, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Well, I'm looking at AI. So it's like Chat GP. I don't know if you know what Perplexity is. Oh, hang on. I started too soon. I don't know if you know what Perplexity is, but it's like AI, but it's more used for like
Okay.
research.
I want to say he died of an illness
How did Marcus
at a pretty
Aurelius
old
die?
age. Like, he died of like natural causes, I want to say.
All right, I'm about to find out. Let me see.
Okay.
Um, Roman Emperor from 161 to 180. So here, I'll share my screen with you so we can look at this together. Yeah, this is interesting. I've actually never looked this up.
Yeah, I
Um,
want to say he died of like a venereal disease or something like that.
can you see this?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so died March 17, 180 at age 58 in, what is that, Vinabona? Yeah, I don't know if that's right. The most widely accepted cause of his death is illness, possibly the Antoine plague? A
Yeah.
pandemic that
Yeah. Some
ravaged
kind of
the
venereal
Roman.
plague. Yeah.
Okay. It says this plague, which may have been a form of smallpox, was prevalent during the final years of his rule and is believed to have claimed millions of lives. It says there are alternative theories and speculations about his death. Some historians suggest that he might have been assassinated,
Right.
possibly by
Poisoned.
poisoning,
Yeah.
although these claims are not supported by contemporary evidence. Um, wow. Another theory proposed by Cassius Dio, I think that's right,
It's a
suggests
cool
that his
name.
physicians may have hastened. Is that hastened?
Hastened
Um,
his death.
you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to say it. I actually am going to say it. There's that American education system.
Sped
All
it
right.
up.
Last time I promise.
Made it happen faster.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Possibly as a form of euthanasia to favor his son, Commodus. I didn't realize he had a son.
Yeah, the guy's a
Um,
dick.
uh, Okay, despite these speculations, the majority of historians agree that Marcus Aurelius died from natural causes, likely due to illness. So, yeah, you were right. Some sort of sickness. So, that's interesting because you hear a lot of, I don't know. I don't know why I would have thought he was like assassinated or murdered or something. I just feel like that's part of, like, that would have been part of his journey. You know what I mean? Um, I don't know. I feel like for some reason, I was almost certain he was assassinated.
It definitely would be a funner story to talk about, for sure. It would, yeah, an
Well, not fun for
assassination
him.
plot. Dude, he just got sick and died at the end of that
Yeah,
extraordinary life. Although
right.
58 is not really young in that time period. It's okay. It's an okay
Hmm.
length of life to have. I mean, it's not extraordinarily old, but it's a decent length of life. 58, pushing
Yeah,
60.
I feel like if you have smallpox at that in that time period, that's probably doing very well. 58 for smallpox.
Yeah.
Because I mean, smallpox like took out some people, man. Uh, but yeah, I don't know, man. He's one of them, and then I don't know if this is considered a Stoic philosopher, but like Seneca, is it Seneca? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seneca.
Seneca, and then there's a couple others. Now, you mentioned martial arts earlier, and I want to get into that with you. But have you followed like I can never pronounce his name, Miyamoto
Epictetus.
Musashi?
Say again?
Miyamoto Musashi. I think he
No.
was like samurai. I don't think
No,
he's
it's
in the.
so interesting that you say that because I literally, towards the end of my book, started researching the similarities and parallels between samurai culture
Hmm.
and Stoic philosophy. And I ended up dropping a footnote into the book, but I didn't want to put anything in the real text because I hadn't done enough research and study in that area. So teach me, please.
Well, yeah. So I don't know. I don't think he was a Stoic because I don't know if like Miyamoto Musashi I think was
Not in Stoic, but
Chinese.
just an alignment of values
Well, yeah, but
between,
yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly right because like
yeah,
I don't even know if this person is in that same philosophy, but there's like so much alignment. But like the thing was, he was another warrior. Like he was another like very popular warrior. And it's just crazy that these things like align with people who are in those positions, you know. So
yeah,
there's clearly something there that works. I mean,
yeah,
there's clearly a philosophy there that works.
yeah. I do agree that there is a component of Stoicism that is essential for leadership. The reason I wrote my book is I think there's also a component of Stoicism that relates to justice, which I call empathy, but it's really the same thing in a lot of ways. And that component, because Stoicism isn't just a way of feeling emotions, Stoicism is a philosophy of how to live your life. To the people who lived it, it was almost a faith system, right? It was almost as important as a religion might be to us right now, right? And so this to them was how to lead the right life, the correct life as it should be lived. And that component does not often get captured by people who talk about Stoicism. And yet it is just as essential as emotional control, if not more so, because it is about the purpose. What is the purpose of the emotional control? Is it to gain empty power so you can oppress others and make them submit to your will? Because that would not be Stoic by any
Right.
Stoic's definition, right? Or is it to maintain power for the benefit, benevolence of other people? And then how do you do that wisely? One of the things that Marcus Aurelius realized is again, the hubris that comes with power. Everyone tells you you're doing a great job. Everyone around you tells you you're doing the great job. And you have all the guns and you have all of the weapons and you have all of the soldiers, right? So you have all
Mhm.
of the power. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. And you can easily surround yourself with an echo chamber. And you can convince yourself, as many do, including like Hitler, that what you're doing is the right thing. People don't think they're the villain in the story. Everybody thinks they're the hero. The question is, how do we find, again, unless you're a complete psychopath, right? Or a sadist. But most people aren't. Most people think the means justify the ends, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to kill 2 million people, but I'm going to save civilization, right? That's the analysis. And I might think, I might abhor that and think that that's horrendous and horribly immoral, but that person doesn't. That person thinks they're strong because they can do that and they can do the thing that's better, right? And again, if you see it in terms of Marvel movies, which my kids are huge fans of the Marvel series, it is the ultimate bad guy in the Marvel series. He's actually just trying to make the universe better, but he's
Mm.
doing it at massive cost to people who had no say in the matter. And there is an obvious lack of justice in those actions. But he doesn't think he's the bad guy. He thinks he's the good guy. And so when it's you, then when you're the leader, when you have the power, and you don't have to be Marcus Aurelius or Thanos or Donald Trump and or any world leader, you could just be the leader of your household. You could be the leader of your community. You could be middle management and have 10 people under you, right? But or just the leader of yourself, of your own life. What you want to do is take control with responsibility, and that involves an element of self-criticism so that you can grow and so that you can catch your own hubris when it happens. And it also involves a component of surrounding yourself with people who are fiercely loyal, but also tell you the truth, right? Like you
Yep.
need the kind of people around you who, if you show up with a bloody shirt and bloody hands, will help you hide the body, but will also fucking punch you in the face and say, what the fuck? What did you do? What's
Right.
happening?
Yeah.
Right? Why did you do this? And if what you did wasn't right, like call you out on your shit.
Mhm.
They might still hide the body because they're your ride or die, but they also call you out. And that is, we need to surround ourselves. And the more power we have, the more important and the more difficult that becomes.
Yeah. See, I love that you bring that up because that's like a real world. I mean, not the hiding the body part, but the part before that was
I
like
was
a
like, it is?
no, that's
I
like
felt
a
it was very hypothetical.
I mean, I don't know. It might be a real world thing for some people, but you were talking about the hero and the villain story or whatever, and I feel
Yeah,
like that's like a real world or a fantasy world application of you were talking about earlier, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor
yeah,
Frankl,
yeah,
how he assigned a purpose to his suffering, and
yeah,
I think when people do that, there's a mission, like some sort of mission they're working on. Like people are able to do like 10x what they would normally, could normally do under those
yeah,
circumstances. Hopefully, we just use that. I think it is a superpower. We just use that superpower for good, you know.
yeah.
Um, but I wanted to show you this really quick about Miyamoto Musashi. I did something. I was looking up while you were talking about that because it's interesting. He has I forgot about this, but he has a book called the Book of Five Rings, and
They
so can
they
you see
made a
this?
Marvel movie out of that too.
Did they really?
Yeah. I think it might
I
be
don't.
called
I
the
haven't
10
watched the super.
Rings or something like that. But yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
So
I
he
swear
so
I'm smart.
Japanese.
I
He
don't, I
was
don't just sit around and watch Marvel movies. I swear. I promise.
no. You're listen. This. It all makes sense, man. You're in that space. So
What do you do,
okay, he
Cher?
was
Oh,
a
I engage in street fighting and I watch Marvel movies. That is
hey. That's like
wrap up
you're
of my
practicing.
life.
You're watching the heroes, and you're going to be a hero. It's practice. Uh, it says, can you see this?
I can, yes.
Okay. Japanese swordsman, strategist, artist, and writer who became renowned through his stories of his unique double bladed swordsmanship and undefeated record in his 62 duels. Um, so he was Japanese, not Chinese. 1645 was when he died, age 61. What was it? That was way after Marcus
Way after
Aurelius,
the
right?
Stoics, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but now his book, and there's a couple things in here, but his book, I said, so what are the key teachings of Miyamoto Musashi's The Book of Five Rings? So, and there's probably a lot of alignment here with Stoicism.
Yeah.
So it says, mastery of one's craft, decisiveness and absoluteness, holistic knowledge, simplicity and effectiveness, no mind, the five rings, which are earth, water, fire, wind, and void, timing and adaptability, personal responsibility, nine principles, uh,
Which include not thinking dishonestly
yep.
and the
Yeah.
importance of training. It's interesting, his interest in art. I find that very interesting.
Where was that at?
Well, first of all, at the top in the intro, it says he was an artist as well as a swordsman, right? That was the introduction. He was a swordsman, a
Oh,
strategist,
yeah, it
an
does say artist.
artist,
Okay. Yep.
and a writer. And he became renowned for stories, which I think is also really fascinating. The significance of the arts in creating the ultimate warrior or emperor king.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. So, so I've always said that
Are
like
you are you not
there's
into the
different
arts?
well, there's like different forms of art. I feel
I
like
agree.
there's like painting and poetry and that kind of stuff. But I think that entrepreneurship is an art. But this guy,
100% agree with that.
this
100%.
guy is like 62 undefeated swords battles. That's an art. There's like something clearly is going on that's like in his best favor with that.
It's true. It's true. I think
So
you're an artist in the way you tell stories on your podcast.
me,
I definitely, yes, there is a way that you tap into, you extract a story and you see what's beautiful and interesting in it, and then you build on it without dominating the conversation. And that's a really incredible thing to be able to do. And what it does is like then you are controlling while interacting with other people, but you are controlling the information that people are getting through you in a story form.
hmm,
And so that is an art. That's essentially like what the Bible is. It's what Hans Christian Andersen did. It's it's also what Tolstoy did, right? It's art.
man, I appreciate that. I've never looked at it that way. Um, I don't know. When I think of art, I think of like somebody like in the dark with a light, like working on something, which I don't know. I do a lot behind
Yeah.
the scenes on this podcast, but
There's a lot of darkness in your background and you are pretty well lit. So that visual is actually very consistent with what I'm looking at right
well,
now.
it's weird when I wear a black shirt, like you can just see limbs and a face. It's like crazy.
You're the artist
Because
in the dark, man. That's what you
so
are.
what
Embrace it.
I don't know. Somebody told me they was like, you need to put a backlight or something behind you. I was like, I don't know. I kind of like the mystery. That's the story I'm saying. At least it just hides
Right.
my unorganized mantle that's behind me. But
Right.
I'm saying that I
I'm
like the
sticking
mystery
with it.
behind it. But it's
Right. It's definitely happening. I
yeah,
chose it intentionally.
yeah,
It's very cool. Dark and
yeah, for
mysterious.
sure. Gosh, what you were talking about art? We were talking about entrepreneurship being an art, and
Yeah, I agree.
oh,
And I
I
think being
was
an entrepreneur is the same as being an artist.
well, yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I think everybody, to be honest, man, I think everybody has some form of art that they can offer.
Yeah.
Whether that's entrepreneurship or poetry or paintings or whatever. But it doesn't even have to be that. It can be like being a person that a person can connect to that's around you that would never have that person outside anywhere else in anything is
Yeah,
an art. Like
I agree.
you can be a person to a person, whether it's your family or whoever, that they will never meet anywhere else.
I
And that's
love
like
that. That's such a beautiful thing to say, and it's so true. It's an art. It's also a form of power and
mm,
control and being a warrior, right? So it can be both of those things at the same time. To go back to what you said about the 62 sword fights, like you just picture in your head in almost kind of like a slow motion the movements of this warrior as he engages in these battles and the mental clarity that he maintains despite the pain that he's in. And if you were to draw the movements, the fluidity of the movements of the sword, right, and even the splash of the blood, I know that's a little dark, but there is something that is artistically beautiful about even something as gruesome as a sword fight.
yeah, I think that's exactly right. I heard, and this is this is apples to oranges here, but I heard Johnny Depp talk about one time about how he did sword fights as Captain Jack Sparrow versus how he
Yeah.
did sword fights as the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Um, and he mentioned how it was like he's an actor, so bringing the personality out is a huge thing for the character. But he mentioned like the practice and the sort of, I guess, dance that went into, that, and like I said, that's not a life or death situation. It's fantasy. I get that. But clearly, if this person had 62 or 61, whatever it was, battles undefeated, like there's clearly it sounds weird to call it a dance because these people are fighting to the death. But that's kind of what it is. It's a dance for your life, literally.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know,
Right. It's a
um,
dance the way boxing is a dance. Right.
dude, I wanted to get into martial arts. I know we only
We
have a
gotta
couple minutes.
go. I
I
have a
know, I know,
noon. I know.
I know,
I'm
I
so
know.
sorry.
We'll have to do it again. We'll have to get into martial arts because I feel like that's a big part of your thing. Where can you be found? Where can the book be found?
A book can be found everywhere books are sold.
Okay.
And yeah, so if it helps you to push that button and have the Amazon guy bring it, cool, no judgment. If you have a local bookstore, feel free to call ahead to make sure it's in stock. And
Mm,
if not, they'll get it for you. And I'm Shermin Kruse with this like impossible to say name. So I'm sure Cody will have all the links and everything for you, but it's
for sure.
sherminkruse.com. And if you just put in Stoic Empathy, I will pop up because that's my jam. And I promise I will do my best to serve you as honestly and with as much integrity as possible.
I love it. Real quick, because I know you got to go. What is the most valuable lesson you've ever learned? Do you think, if you could sum it up for us?
I would say, and we touched on this today because I think our conversation today was so incredibly deep and wonderful. The most important lesson I've ever learned is the essential and the difficulty of walking the line between confidence and humility, and
Mm,
how the two interplay to result in wisdom, and how it's really important that we have both and project both. And again, and I think I said this earlier, it's not an easy task for me either. And yet I think until I reached a certain age, I didn't really quite understand the balance that needed to take form. And I feel like I'm finally there at this point in my life. And it's such a gift to be able to tightrope that a little bit better now than I could 20 years ago. And I genuinely look forward to the time where my joints are so sore that I can barely walk, but I can do that tightrope better than I ever could in my entire life. That, that to me is success.
hmm. Man, I love that. Look, this is what you just did. You took you said your mother was a mathematician.
Yes.
You took her philosophy and you took your philosophy of Stoicism and you combined the two because you said that self-confidence plus humility equals wisdom. That's like that's like an equation for life right there, man.
I love that. Oh my God. Maybe that'll be the next book. That is
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll clip it. I'll clip that and tag you in it. I'll have to send you that one. Listen, I know you got to get out of here. I do appreciate it. Been a great conversation.
It was great. Thank you, Cody. I
If
really, really enjoyed it.
Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.